Hello, welcome to My Worst Day on Forbes Africa TV. My name is Peace Hyde, and joining us today we have a man who's regarded as one of the most creative and consummate professionals in the international real estate management industry, Ric Lewis. With more than 25 years of experience and investment success, Lewis is the chairman of the Investment Committee, Chief Executive and founding partner of Tristan Capital Partners, a graduate of Dartmouth College in the USA, where he received an AB Economics. Ric is also an alumni of Harvard Business School in the US. He is also a partner and senior management director of AEW Capital Management, an investment management business with 200 staff and $25 billion under management. Moving to Europe, Ric then became the Chief Investment Officer and Board Director of AEW Europe, a pan-European real estate investment management business with 11 offices, 270 staff, and an 18 billion euros in assets under management. He then founded and served for several years as a chief executive for Curzon Global Partners, a London-based real estate investment company owned by AEW Europe. So you recently topped the Power List as the UK's most influential person of African and African Caribbean heritage. Now, as you reflect on your incredible successful journey, how would you describe the man behind all these amazing accolades?
Well, thank you for that. I'm not sure that I think, I think what Power List is doing is incredible. I'm not sure that, anyone deserves to be ahead of anyone else as first, second, or third, but I really appreciate the accolades. The way I think of myself first is probably, closer to home. I'm first and foremost, a father of two beautiful, wonderful, intelligent teenage daughters. My title here at Tristan Capital, real estate private equity firm, is as chairman and co-chief executive of the firm. But what I really think of myself as a builder of businesses and teams and brand, organizations that outperform their own expectations of themselves. Mm-hmm. We do it here at Tristan in real estate private equity, but I like to believe of myself that I could have done it in any industry, whether it was in sports, business, etc. I really get a passion from building teams and organizations. Mm-hmm. The other part of me, I think the yin to my yang, is that, people call it philanthropy or philanthropist, but I think I'm an investor in communities. And so I spend a great deal of time, both personally with myself and my time on boards and organizations, but also through my foundation, the Black Heart Foundation, investing in the community that I live in, Greater UK, and the one I used to live in the US, where I came from.
Amazing. And you have quite an interesting career in real estate management industry, moving from AEW Capital Management in the USA and then making the transition to Europe as well. Now, talk to me about the early stage of your career. I mean, how did that journey transform over the years to build you to where you are today?
Well, revisionist history is perfect, so how I think about it probably has been shaped by sort of where I am rather than what actually happened. Mm-hmm. From the time I was an undergraduate studying economics at Dartmouth College or later on at Harvard Business School, I knew I wanted to be, or try to perfect my craft in somewhere in the financial arena. Mm-hmm. I first trained in banking, so I learned credit, etc. And then I moved quickly into the real estate investment arena, and I worked my way up in a US firm from being an analyst and doing all the hard overnight work to eventually a senior partner.
Yes.
How I got here to Europe is, as I was a senior partner of a big US firm, I was one of 7 partners, and I wrote the business plan, or effectively shaped the business plan to take us out of our North America-focused business to a global business. Mm-hmm. When I did that, my partners turned to me and said, okay, smart guy, you're gonna go do this. And so I had crafted the plan, and it made sense that I move to Europe to perfect the plan. I thought I would be in London and in Europe for 2 or 3 years, and I would turn over the business that I created and started to grow to a different organization or a different group of people in the organization. But that's not always the way things work. We grew very rapidly in 1999 when we first created the business over here, from 0 to almost 20 billion under management in 10 years. At the same time, I started my family, my daughters were born, and you start to make roots in a place where they're here, this is their cultural reference point, they start to go to school here, and you combine the two and you realize that this is more home than where you grew up.
Yeah. Now, you described a very strong corporate career, but after several years of working with AEW, you then founded Curzon Global Partners, which is a London-based real estate investment company. Now, talk to me about that move into entrepreneurship and how did that opportunity come about?
I think that's great. So AEW, so Curzon was really the European arm of AEW.
Okay.
But I think it raises an interesting point. In my career, I moved from intrapreneurship to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So I've been a chief executive or the leader and starter and founder of business 3 times. The first time was all of AEW was in the US back in the middle 90s. I created a business that eventually liquidated 2 failed banks in the savings and loan debacle of the late 90s in the States. The second one was creating Curzon Global Partners, which was the footprint that we started in Europe. So Curzon Global Partners was AEW's European business. We named it Curzon because it was more of a European name. You could say it in every country and in every language and felt more local. But I was still kind of an entrepreneur. I mean, at some level, I was starting and founding a business doing all the same things that an entrepreneur would, but I was doing it under the ownership of my partners, sharing the financial responsibility. Later on, and I'm sure we'll may touch on this, when I created Tristan Capital, it was truly as an entrepreneur with my and our own money and our own financial responsibility for everything that happened.
What were some of the lessons that you learned from entrepreneurship that you were able to actually assist you in your journey as an entrepreneur? What were the crossovers?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossovers. I mean, I basically, for a number of years, and maybe this is a little revisionist, but I feel like I experimented with a bunch of different models and saw what worked, what I liked, and what didn't work. The thing that we created differently at Tristan and that I felt really deeply about is I wanted to create an intended culture of winning, and how we would work together, how we would work with clients, and have some basic principles of how we would do business, so that anyone that comes to work at our firm at Tristan Capital is effectively signing on to saying, yeah, these principles of how I want to spend my work life. When you consider that you spend 70 to 80% of your awake life at work, at your job, at your employment, at your vocation, why wouldn't you want to work with people you like, you trust, and in a way that motivates you rather than demotivates you? And so when you finally become an entrepreneur and you're doing it, and you're doing it with your own money, you get the freedom, the responsibility, because it's great responsibility, but you get the freedom to actually create the culture and business practices that are the sum total of what you've learned all the years before, and you get to put them in place. And that was really valuable and rewarding.
Right, and in terms of your philanthropic work with Black Hearts, what is the vision around that foundation? I know you said that you're focused on the UK and the US markets, but what is the vision of the foundation?
The vision of the foundation, the Black Heart Foundation, is really removing the barriers to aspiration and achievement for talented, committed, hardworking people, largely young people, that are trying to do something but lack the resources and support or some of the resources and support to achieve their dreams. And it really comes to me as part of my own experience. I look back at those seminal moments where someone I didn't expect stepped in and changed my perspective about what was possible for me, changed what I refer to as my aspiration bubble, what I believed I could achieve, and expanded that not 2-fold, 3-fold, but 10-fold. That's what we're trying to do for a generation or a generation and a half of young people in the UK and the US. We do that 2 ways. We provide financial support to organizations that are doing that for people, encouraging, providing support, teaching, pastoral care to young people that are either in school or other experiential learning programs. And we've supported over 50 programs in and around the UK and abroad to date. And then we also have our Black Heart Scholars Program, where we are providing bursaries to young, talented people to pursue their dreams in university, usually tertiary education, but also there's people that are pursuing their master's, their law degree, their PhD, etc. Right now we have 35 Black Heart Scholars, and I want to take that to 100 and then 200 and then 500.
Amazing. And now with a successful career like yours, I'm sure you've seen a lot of ups and downs, but what would you say has stood out to you as your worst day in business so far?
I think the worst day in business actually turned into, funny enough, into approaching one of the best days. We had created the business Curzon Global Partners, as a subsidiary of AEW. Along the way, AEW had sold itself to a consortium of entities that were based in France. That should have been in concept a good thing. I was a European business and I was going to have a European parent. Unfortunately, the cultural differences, and I don't mean French versus the rest of the world, the cultural differences of the ownership inside of our group valued different things than I thought we needed to value for our customers, our team, etc. And so as the leader of the business, you get to a point where you realize the people that own your business have a different point of view than you do. And I made the decision, which was very difficult for me, that I needed to leave the business. I can count on less than half a hand the number of things I've quit in my life. So the idea that I was going to move on to something else was really personally disappointing, but I realized that this wasn't going to move forward in a way that matched and met my convictions about how a successful business should run. No disrespect to the remnant business that they have. So I went to my partners and the senior organization in the US and France, told them the news. They asked me to stay on for a while so that we could make a good transition. I stayed on an additional year where we found a new CIO and a new CEO for the business. And then, so that was the real disappointing, worst day of my life. I'm leaving an organization in AEW that I'd worked for and with for 21 years, and leaving a business, Curzon, that I had grown for 9.5 years, 10 years. Very difficult emotionally, professionally for me. We went in to tell the clients that we were going to make this change, and here were the new people, and they said, okay, we understand, we're coming with you. I didn't have a plan to create a new business. I was going to go take some time off, spend more time with my daughters, maybe play a little golf, be back in the gym a little more often and travel. And they said, no, we're coming with you and your team. And so I'll give you the short version. We engineered a client-led lift out that created Tristan Capital, and those clients are still with us today. So my worst day actually turned into a really good day over time.
Amazing. When you actually created that lift out business, did you have a vision for it? Was there a plan that, look, if this is what I'm about to do, then it's going to be huge? Or was you just thinking, I'm going to take it step by step? Was there ever a point where a strategy was put into place?
Well, I think that, as you're operating any business, you have a firm idea of how you would do things if you had complete freedom and a blank piece of paper. I wasn't expecting to get the blank piece of paper that day. That's probably what I would have looked for or created after a little time off. But so I had it imbued in me, not exactly, but a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do. And so we set about creating a business that would be successful, a disruptor, et cetera. There is no piece when we look back where we go, well, why did we do that? There's a pretty solid and thoughtful continuum of how we grew the business into the business that we are today, 10 years hence.
Now, I believe that this news came around the time where the company had raised the largest fund to date. I was under the understanding that a European Property Investors Special Opportunities LP had crawled about 800 million euros. Now, against this backdrop, what actions did you take immediately and in the short term to actually have that successful transition?
Well, I think that's the part that's difficult, right? So I had a relationship, and we had a relationship with clients where we had just raised our second fund, which was 800 million. You've just taken capital from somebody, and I like to refer to it, whatever the business term is, that, you know, I feel like I'm the keeper of the promise. You know, clients underwrite the entire firm, but in the end, they're looking across the table, and somebody has to be responsible to saying, like, I take the responsibility that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And I had just done that with my partners, you know, for a piece of the Apiso fund for 800 million. And we were going to go around and tell them that, you know, I was leaving. So that's what created that worst day event.
Yes.
You know, you feel like you're turning back on your word. So you can imagine the stress or, you know, sadness of mind that I had that led me to feel like that was the inevitable but rightful consequence to go in and have that conversation. You know, again, to my surprise, that their response was, okay, we understand, but we not only want you still consulting on the fund that you just raised, we'd like to actually build a business and stay with you as a client.
Amazing. Although you had been working obviously in this business for many years, the idea of now going it on your own and building this business, was it something that you felt you were able to do, or did you actually believe you were able to do this on your own?
Yeah, again, retrospect's perfect, but yes, I believe so. I think I trained my whole life for this. I mean, as I had been an entrepreneur and taking steps closer to being an entrepreneur, I think, you know, if I hadn't done this then, I'd be looking to do it now. I don't think my business career would have been complete until I did this, taking on the full responsibility and risk of creating a company on my own. I don't mean not with partners, I don't mean not with investors or stakeholders, but knowing that I was responsible, win or fail, for what you create. And I feel like that's what I did. And I think once you've done that, you don't have fear about doing anything else. You know, once you've done that and you've taken on that responsibility, and you're responsible for the payroll, for people's livelihood and their well-being, and, you know, the promise to clients, etc. You know, once you've done that and you've taken on the responsibility of fatherhood, and you've, you know, looked after, you know, your family and your parents, you know, what else is there? There's nothing else that's scary out in the world. And I think that probably shapes my character today. You know, when I started thinking about how I wanted to involve myself in the community, I thought, okay, I've got to knit the things that I'm doing together into some cohesive whole. And the starting of my foundation, I think other people think, well, you can't just start a foundation. I'm thinking, well, why can't you? And so I went and figured out the rules and created an organization that was a charitable organization in both the US and UK. It doesn't cost that much, doesn't take that much work, but it takes a vision of what you want to do with it, and being comfortable about assuming the responsibility for what you create.
Yes, I like the fact that you mentioned about assuming the responsibility.
Right.
You obviously now are getting through your worst day and transitioning it to probably one of the best points in your life. But what was the actual step-by-step process that you went through to actually make that the newfound responsibility a success?
Well, I think it's all kinds of things. I think first you start to think about, okay, who do I want to partner with? I mean, it's great that you have a vision, but no one can do it alone. So you start thinking about who you want to partner with, and that came pretty easy. We won't talk about all the details there, but, you know, Ian Lamming, who is my co-chief executive, became one of my first partners, along with my, you know, assistant. And then quickly, pretty rapidly, other people decided they wanted to join, so that's one of it. But one of the things, I think, beyond that, it's thinking about what that business plan looks like.
Yeah.
What's the next year? What's the next 5 years? And I think we've been particularly good at thinking about what we want to be and look like 5 years down the road, and not just in the next year. Right. You have to stay focused on what's in front of you, but have a pretty good perspective of what you're building for, so that you don't always engage in renewable one-year business plans where you feel like you're starting over every year. You know, when we get to I mean, we're doing it still now. We're 10 years old, and we're taking new space and revising and renewing our systems for the business that we expect to be when we're 15 years old.
In terms of your business journey, what is your view on failure, and how would you advise other entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs to deal with it?
So my response to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs is the same response that I give to a lot of the young men and women that I work with as part of the foundation, is that I promise you that every person you look at, every person you know, has failed dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. They may not show it, they may not wear it on their sleeve, they may not talk about it, but they have, and so have I. There's a lot of people that look at me, you know, the young people, and go, I want to be where you are. And I'm like, I wasn't born on third base. Like, you know, you have to get there. And along the way, there's plenty of things that went wrong. As they do, I think it's really important to try and learn from those failures. So I always say, if you can, fail forward. Fail forward, because, you know, failure by definition means some loss of, you know, of potential. And if you can offset that by some education, some lessons that you've taken from that helps you be better the next time, smarter and more accurate and more productive the next time, then maybe you can justify it's worth it. That's always been my approach, is that if I'm going to fail, what did I learn from it, and how is it going to affect my go forward thinking and activity in a way that feels like I'm a better and smarter individual, entrepreneur, philanthropist, etc.
And in terms of, obviously, you've built such an amazing, successful career within the real estate investment sector. What would be your advice to young entrepreneurs who are looking to branch out into that industry?
Boy, that's a big, loaded question. But I think one of the things is that, you know, what we find sometimes is that there are too narrow a slot of people that are qualified entry level into real estate private equity. And I think it's that they believe that they understand how you can get into certain jobs, perhaps in the advisory services in real estate, or working for an agent or a valuation company, but they think, you know, the real estate private equity is for the rarefied version that only goes to friends of friends or friends of family. It's just not the case. When we hire for our analyst program, we're really looking for people to have figured out sometime, whether in university or in their masters, what are those few things that are really important in the private equity world, because we want a greater selection, a greater body of people to select from as young talent in our firm. So I would say to young people, go figure out and ask the question about what's important to private equity and real estate private equity firms, and try and make that part of your education process so that you come out of that first stage ready and attractive to companies like us that really want to hire you.
An amazing entrepreneur who turned his worst day into a golden opportunity to move into the best business decision of his life. My name is Peace Hyde, and I'll see you next time on another exciting episode of My Worst Day on Forbes Africa TV.